listeners, today I'm going to be making a Tennessee jam cake, and this particular recipe came out of my grandmother's cookbook. It's a pinch of this and a dash of that and a speckle of this, and so I've made this once, I think, in my adult life, and I'm going to try to remake it again. I do remember it being delicious and sweet and wonderful, almost like it's great with coffee or ice cream or whipped cream. So in lieu of Father's Day weekend, I'm going to put out some dessert recipes so that everybody can try them, and there'll be different things, not anything classic. We're going to pull from the Deep South, and I'm going to put some recipes together. It's the summertime, almost July. Can you believe it? Almost July. And I'm going to be doing some traveling depending on how things go, on how far I get. I've got a lot of family that I'd like to see this year I haven't seen since last year, and typically around the 4th of July I do a lot of traveling because my kids don't live around me, and I'd like to go and see them and see how they're doing in Texas. And then I have a mother. My mother is still alive, and she lives in Louisiana. She's 84 years old, so I'd like to go get some time with her. And so I'm going to put out a few videos, and I'm going to time them to where they roll out while I'm out of town. And anyway, let's get started on the Tennessee jam cake. I think you're going to love this one. Certainly something you guys should try. So I'm going to turn the camera, and we're going to start getting our cake together. Okay, we have all of our ingredients laid out here, so hopefully I'm not forgetting anything. But we're going to start by creaming our butter and sugar together. So I've got a stick of butter. It's a little softer than I'd like it to be, but it's perfect. Just a stick of butter or a half a cup of butter at room temperature. And I'm using real butter. I'm not using margarine. So you could try it with margarine. Don't know. I haven't used margarine in 10 years or more. But anyway, we're going to cream our butter together with our sugar, and it's 1.5 cups of granulated sugar. I'm using pure cane. There. You want your butter and your sugar to be, fluffy. So, almost like snow. You just want it to be fluffy. Okay, so to this we're going to add 4 eggs, and I'm just going to use our chicken eggs. And they're room temperature because I don't refrigerate eggs. We go through them too fast, and the ones that, if we have too many eggs, I just give them away. There's a nursing facility that's it's an elderly nursing care place that I go and drop eggs off of all the time because we have probably 12 eggs a day and we can't eat that many. So whatever we have extra, I just give it away. So just gonna add, these are just medium chicken eggs. Okay, we're going to mix our eggs in. Okay, at this point, I'm going to go ahead and add our spices. And let me just go over the spices with you. What I'll do is, if you don't have the ability to write this down right now, I'll put this recipe on our blog page where you can just click and print it off. You don't need an email address or anything like that. You can just go to the blog page, click print this recipe or the print button, and it'll print the recipe out and just on a regular plain piece of paper for you. So this is a teaspoon, and I've translated this again because my grandmother always used like a dash of this, a pinch of that. it's very difficult to understand. And so I was able to, talking with some other elderly women, being able to put this together. And anyway, so I'm just going to give you her recipe translated into one that I think is more accurate. So a teaspoon of soda, which is baking soda, a teaspoon of nutmeg, a teaspoon of cinnamon, a teaspoon of cloves, and 1/4 of a teaspoon of salt. I'm using kosher salt to put in here. And that's the spices that you're going to need. There's no vanilla, there's no almond flavoring or anything like that. This is the flavor that you're going to have. And we'll get this mixed in. Okay. And then the next thing we're going to add is 10 ounces of jelly or jam. So I'm going to use apple. This is just homemade apple jelly. And just regular apple jelly, nothing special. If I can get the lid off of it. And hopefully. Okay, let me go grab something to get this lid off. Alright, so then we're just going to add 10 ounces of apple jelly. And this should come completely out. And it can be cold or room temperature from your pantry. You can even buy the Welch's. If you want to use grape, blackberry works well, strawberry rhubarb, apricot, orange. I mean, just a jelly of your favorite flavor. I'm using apple because I'm using cloves and cinnamon, and that seems to be like something that would really go with it. Okay. And even further, we're going to go ahead and add 2½ cups of flour. And what I'm going to do is, this is AP flour. I've never done it with cake flour, but I don't think you're going to need it, cake flour, because we added the soda and salt and all that stuff separately. So this is 1 cup of flour I'm going to mix in. Now I'm going to add a little bit of buttermilk. You're going to need a cup total to go in this recipe, but I'm going to add a little bit at a time because in her notes she has you need to rotate wet and dry ingredients in order to combine them really well. So I'm just going to follow her lead, and I'm going to do half a cup now. If you add all the flour now, it's going to get really, dry and clunky and hard to mix. Okay, then we're going to get another, and then all we have left is a half to put in here. Okay, and then we have a half of buttermilk left. now I'm going to do the half buttermilk, which will make our full cup of buttermilk. And then I'm going to put our half of the 2.5 cups, the half into the, I'll lay it on top of this buttermilk. I'm going to see if it'll blend really well. Okay, so the cake is completely mixed. And what I'm going to do next is I'm going to fold in some pecans. You could leave the tree nuts out of this recipe and certainly it would be yummy because we're going to make the frosting next. It's going to have frosting on it. But this cake is just real decadent and really needs the saltiness of the tree nuts. So you could add walnuts, pecans, almonds, anything like that to this cake and it's just going to be fabulous. So I'm going to add a cup of pecans, and some are chopped and some are halves. So I'm just going to dump it in. And we're going to fold this in with the beaters because we're not going to need them. I did this with a hand mixer today because you have a little bit more control of, you know, getting all the sides and the mixing and all of that. So, and what we're going to do here is just fold in the pecans. Now, my husband can't even eat this because there's got pecans in it. So I'm going to be giving some of this to our neighbors for Father's Day. There's a lot of fathers around here with no wives or no children around. And so they live out here in these rural communities, and you know, family picks bigger holidays to visit, and with the pandemic people are not getting visitation. So I'm gonna make sure that they have something, and I wanted to pick something, a retro dessert that maybe they would remember from their mothers or grandmothers. So anyway, I hope you enjoy making and eating this delicious cake. All right, we're gonna get our pans ready, and we'll be back. I'm gonna get, we're gonna layer this. You're gonna want a 350 oven ready to go, piping hot, and we're gonna do 3 layers, the little round 9-inch layers, and we're gonna do a layer cake on this one because we're going to put frosting in between each layer and it just soaks in. It's delicious. You'll love it. So we'll be back in just a second. I've got my pans. I'm using the pan flour and oil spray on these. Let me show you the pans that I'm going to be using. This is going to be the Wilton Easy Layers, and they're 8 inches, 4 pans, and it's going to make a layer cake. These are the layer cake pans I'm going to be using. So I'm going to ladle the mixture out onto these pans, and then we're going to bake them. And you don't want them, you know, so full that they're going to run over, but you want them full enough to where they're going to make a good layer. Okay, last one. scrape this bowl. I may have overfilled that one a little bit. Okay, we're going to bake these for 20 minutes and check them. And we'll be back. I'm going to be checking them all. These are thin layers, and so you really don't want to cook it for 30 minutes. You'll burn them. And so what I do is I just set the timer for 20 minutes, and I check them to see if they're done. And then if they need longer, I just let them go a little bit, you know, a little bit longer. So, all right. Okay, so next we're going to work on the frosting. And that is a cup of brown sugar, a stick of butter, and a half a cup of milk. And we're going to bring that to a boil. So let's go ahead and get our butter in here. I'm not using margarine, I'm using real butter, just regular butter. All right. And we're going to go ahead and put this on, I'm going to say a medium high just till I get the butter melted, and then we'll jack up the heat, we'll rank up the heat on it. And we're going to get half a cup of milk. And all we're doing really is making caramel. That's what this is. A teaspoon or teaspoon and a half of maple flavor. But you don't have to do that. That's not part of the recipe. It's just how I'm going to flavor it. Just about all I had left. We're almost to a boil here. You can see the bubbles. Let it boil here for a minute. I'm going to go ahead and turn off the heat. You don't want it to burn or boil over. Don't take a phone call during this process because it'll be a mess. This is cooling down. We're going to add 3 cups of powdered sugar. And I really believe that's all I have left in this little container. We're going to do 1, 2, 3. We're just going to stir until this becomes really thick, and we want to stir it until all the lumps are out. All the sugar is dissolved. Maybe the noise isn't so bad now. Just want to get that sugar. I'm going to put this on low. Dissolved. And what this is going to do is just going to crackle on the cake. I'm telling you, it's like candied praline cake is really what it reminds me of, but the recipe name is called Tennessee Jam Cake. And I would bet if you use like a blackberry jelly, you could put you could go with, I use a lot of the Torani flavors. And I know they have a blackberry one. You could absolutely use this in this cake too and make a, you know, the flavor of blackberry would be really strong. And I know they have blueberry, so you could do blueberry jelly and make this strawberry, pineapple. I mean, this cake can take on just a ton of flavors. And I've almost got all of the lumps out. And just keep stirring it until we do. Because when you pour it on, you really don't want lumps of powdered sugar. Turn this up just a little bit. And I really think this is more of an icing than a frosting, but they call it a frosting. But icings are usually made with a lot of confectioner sugar that's cooked, and frosting is usually made with confectioner sugar that's not cooked. So that's how I distinguish the difference. But hey, if they want to call this frosting, that's fine. Okay, I think all of our lumps are just about gone. And with the apple, maple, and this caramel, it's just going to be just a delicious cake. I really hope you try it. Okay, I think we're there. All right, so we're gonna go assemble a cake and get all the layers, and I'm going to put some of this frosting on each layer, and it's just going to soak through the cake. Okay, so we have our first layer down, and I've got our, what they're calling the frosting, the brown sugar frosting, and we're just going to pour. It's been cooling for a little bit, and I just make sure maybe it doesn't roll off the edges too fast. That's why you want it to kind of thicken up so it just doesn't pour, and it's going to start to absorb in the cake. We're going to put on our second layer. And I've trimmed these. If you're using these same pans I'm using, the cake does go off around the edges. I've had to put some foil in the bottom of my oven because it does go off of the pan a little bit. And I just trimmed around the edges. So then we're going to take sugar again, pour. We got 4 layers, so we don't want to use it all. So I'm just going to make sure. Okay, we're going to put our third layer on here. I have just a little bit on the crumbs that are coming off the side over here, but that's okay. Get a knife. Just gonna get all of it to the edge. Right. Before this cools off too much. Okay. Alright. This cake is so buttery. Alright. That is our Tennessee jam cake. take the camera a little bit, give y'all a view around. That's 4 layers. And this is the frosting as well. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you'll join me next time, and I certainly hope you'll try this recipe. Everybody have a blessed day and find someone to bless.